Welcome to episode 7 of the Splitfire gaming podcast. I never thought it would get to 7 or 6 or 5, but I'm going to churn them out whether or not people watch them. Anyway, this is my first collaboration with another YouTuber. We've got Graeme on today. Welcome, Graeme.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. How does it feel to be on with such a well-respected YouTuber as myself?
You mean like on your 7th episode? Your the heady heights of.
Number 7.
I think both of us are in the pre-100 subscribers like bliss at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think even if we added together our subscribers, we'd get one of those silver badges that you get.
That's it. It's scary, isn't it? Thinking about like where you put, because I'm like happy to have like, I think it's like 60 or something I've got at the moment for the Battle Search channel, and it's and I'm happy with that. And it's like a bit scary to think like, oh, like 200,000, that's quite a lot more than that, or like 1.7 million. And you just like,
yeah, you can't really read the comments at the same rate that you do.
But that's it. It's like, imagine getting to that point where you just can't respond to anything, or like. It must be awful to be a proper YouTuber where it's like every day you're just like, I've got to put out a 30-second video because that's how the algorithm works.
The thing I don't worry about it because it's not going to happen, but constantly having to push garbage mobile games and pretending that they're the greatest thing ever.
See, the problem with my channel is that I don't. It's not silly at the moment. Like it's starting off being kind of serious with the lore videos and stuff. But I think once I actually get to being able to do battle reports and whatnot, it'll get sillier. And I was thinking about just putting like fake adverts in to just having it. So it's kind of like you have the Raid Shadow Legends advert, but you're not making any money for it. You're still pissing people off. And it's just, it's just a made up video game or something.
I like how that's become such a trope that like Raid Shadow Legends is now verging on a joke.
Well, I think it's proof that advertising doesn't work in a lot of cases, because like I've seen so many adverts for it and I have no inclination of downloading it whatsoever. And
I'm not going to use that, and I'm not going to use Skillshare. I'm not going to use NordVPN. So
that's it. Wait, it's one of these things. I've got a VPN. I use Windscribe VPN, and that's free. So fuck you, Nord.
This is going to come back to bite me on the arse when they
approach you and they're like, "Oh, Mark,
we'll just
with all your subscribers."
All 50 of them. We'll pick a random episode 7 just to make sure you're the kind of person we need to do the business with. Oh, right.
No. They'll send the boys around.
We'll take our stipend of £50 a month and we'll leave.
Just baseball bats with Nord written on it. Go on.
So you are a YouTuber. You're the Battle Search man. Usually we do the plugs at the end, but since nobody listens to the end,
nobody gets to it. I died before the last one. It was.
I am not changing the length.
The length. It's width that matters. I'm just saying that now.
That's oh god, I might have to cut that. So yours is you do a borderline ASMR retelling of Dark Elf lore, which is an interesting combination of relaxation and brutal murder.
Well, it's really weird because it's like everyone said that I've got like a voice for radio. Or is it face for radio? I don't know. One of the two of them kind of thing. But
one's a compliment, one's not. So
well, yeah, I've got an ass for television though, so that's something to tell your friends. And because the problem is, I was like, I really want to get into narrating stuff. And what else can you do under lockdown? Because we can't do battle reports. I can't like host tournaments and stuff like I wanted to. So I was trying to find something Warhammer related that I can do that there aren't lots of people doing it. Because I think there's loads of channels where they're doing their own versions of it, where they spend months and months going, hey, I've put together a sort of, a full my written history of Slan Mage priests, or, like the Eldar or something. And I was like, well, I just kind of want to know what's in the books. Like, I just want to see what's written in the books, because because I've got all of the Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition army books, and a lot of them I haven't actually read the blurb. Like I haven't actually read the story and the lore in it and stuff, because I don't think a lot of people do. So I thought putting it into a format where it's just me reading it, where you can put it on and listen to it, obviously not like, and being very plain about, I did not write this. This is from the army book.
Yeah, lawyers don't come after.
Because like no one seemed to be doing that, and I think it's good for the people who can't get their hands on the army books anymore, because thank you Games Workshop, you could at least put the PDFs on the Black Library, without doing it illegally, kind of thing. And people who just don't like reading, because I think we're getting a lot of people like that nowadays, where books aren't their thing, especially when Audible and stuff exists.
Yeah, I think it's because people now, for various reasons, don't have the same attention span. So you're painting and you're doing something else, or you're watching the telly and you're on your phone. Yeah. So having something, this is the idea of this. Similar, I had to do something in lockdown, and I've got no particular skill other than I know
painting high elf archers. Though you're very good at that.
Well, oh please. It's just filling in my Golden Demon application right now. But no, it's good. It's good to get because everyone's on about the crunch and like, build the best list, but the fluff sort of gets sidelined a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, because I've everyone who's played against me knows that I'm a very like fluffy player, and I don't do tournament lists. Like, I actually feel bad if I sort of smash an opponent. And so for me, like, fluff is really important. And a lot of the time when I start a new army, it's built around the idea of fluff. So like with my Beastman army, the whole reason I started a Beastman army was because I fell in love with the character of Moonclaw. And so the whole army is, yeah.
I guess I saw your guest appearance on Alan's.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's got the Beastman army. And that was fairly stupid, and I can't wait to do more battle reports with Alan.
It was comedy gold. I'll put the link below, because I don't think.
Yeah, that's it. What's his channel called? Because it was BD Wargaming on
Toy Soldier Tales. This is
Toy Soldier Tales, because it was something on Facebook, and he's just changed it so it matches up with his YouTube channel.
Even though his picture is of a knight, and he's a fantasy battle player, whatever.
Well, it's one of these things. It's I don't know, whatever floats his boat, I guess. But yeah, and I forgot what I was saying. Something.
Short the army. Ironically, short memory span. Short attention span.
I couldn't even write my own lore if I tried with this bloody memory.
Moonclaw, that was it. Yeah.
That's so I fell in love with the idea of Moonclaw and built an army around him. And I was trying not to do the tropes that you get in Beastmen, and like, and there's a mix of that. Oh, well, these are the units you need. Because I hate that. Like, I think 8th edition had it a lot. And I think 6th edition had it a lot, where it was going, hey, you need these units to win. And I think Age of Sigmar has it fuck tons. Like, and so I stopped playing that, because it was like, hey, you want to win, you have to buy this. You have to have this as your core list. And luckily there's a lot of armies in Fantasy 8th edition where it kind of, you get leniency. Like High Elves and Dark Elves are perfect examples that you can just take whatever the hell you want, because everything's good. They don't
there's no
have a bad option.
No.
Whereas Vampire Counts is like, oh, you want to win against the tournament list? Well, you're going to need a Blender Lord, and you're going to need 3 Terrorgeists, and you're going to need like Banshee Screams, and you end up just being like, oh, okay, so I can't win with just skeletons then. And they're like,
no. I find although I do like the tournament side of it, I've got a Tomb King's army, and it's purely because I like the aesthetic, and I've never won with them, and I don't think I ever will. But the full Egypt undead look, I just like that so much that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like Tomb Kings. Like I have Tomb Kings, and I've never been successful with them through. It's one of these things of going like, oh, well, how do you win? You take 50 bowmen with Khalida, and then you just attack the fuck out of everyone. You're just like going, that I don't want to do that. That sounds like a dick move.
Yeah, there is one way to win.
And then you have 9 chariots, and you're like, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. Like I want to, have an army list where I'm using skeleton, like horse archers, and everyone's like, why? It's like 5 like 5+ hitting shots, and that's it.
And they can't march.
Yeah, that's it.
Whoever wrote that book hated the Tomb Kings. For some reason, they got the person who hated the Tomb Kings to write their book.
I think it was what we saw in 8th edition fantasy is the early days of what Games Workshop are doing now, where they're kind of it's like, I don't know the word, reactionary kind of rules development, where they're kind of releasing stuff and then going, oh, that was crap. Okay, well, we'll fix it and totally destroy it. And obviously it's like to sell models where they go, hey, this unit's absolutely amazing, blah, 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 buy all the models. And then, it's rubbish now. It's,
That's something new coming out.
Yeah, and I think Tomb Kings, because I think it was the first book they released.
Yeah,
of
they were
8th
the
edition.
they were first in 8.
I don't think they were talking to each other, and they just went, "Okay, here's how they work," and then everyone else was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a better book than that." And then by the end, you had like Wood Elves, where they're a bit crap, but like they're ludicrously overpowered in bits. Like, because just before lockdown, I played a game with Nagash because I was like, "Oh, I've only played like 3 games with Nagash ever," because he's 1,000 points. Like, you need like a 4,000 point army to fit him in, unless you're going to use the weird end times like percentage changes.
No, I don't agree with that.
I kind of like it because it allows you to use a lot of your models. Because there's loads of stuff where I'm like, I will never field Malekith. Like, there is not a situation where I'm going to be playing with an army big enough to fit Malekith on Seraphon in. That isn't kind of like a full day tournament, like a full
3,000,
event
4,000 points. Well, it's 4,000 points for Nagash, isn't it? Because he's 1,000.
Yeah. So it's and I played like a game, and then my mate just naturally took Wood Elves and just had like 3 units of sort of 40 Glade Guard set up so that like 3 ranks of them could shoot or something, and they all had like poisoned attack weapons, and you're like, oh, fuck off. So he didn't survive turn 1. So it's
well, that's the hard counter to Nagash, is it, the poison weapon?
Shooting him,
yeah.
Actually attacking him. I mean, it's one of these things where it's like, it's an odd thing because like Fantasy 8th edition is not kind to big monsters, and I hate the fact that it's so bad for monsters. Like, there's no reason to take them in a lot of cases, and then the rules kind of make it worse, where you have cannons where I thought for the longest time that you randomized on a cannon.
No, it's template, it goes straight through both.
Yeah, and you just like, what? That's literally like, they sort of sat there and went, oh, it's a bit cruel at the moment, and they can like kind of fuck up your entire army on turn 1. We'll make it worse. you know what? Because at least then you kind of go like, if you had it where ward saves automatically transferred to the monster, that would be cool. And then it's like, okay,
right
they get hit.
Right in the end times where they had combined profiles, which protected it. Like, well, the game's exploded now, so you've missed the boat on that one.
That's it, and I didn't like that. I didn't like combined profiles. I don't like it in 40k still. But I think the simple solution was you just made it where like a ward save went over each of them, and then stuff like Scaly Skin wouldn't. But if the monster had regen, or like a necromancer on a corpse cart, I love fielding them, but they're rubbish. Like, it's the corpse cart has a 4+ regen, but the necromancer has nothing. And if you want to take a ward save for him, that takes up all of his magic item slots. So he's just literally a guy on a corpse cart. You're like, oh, great. With like movement 4, can't march. I'm confident in this. All it would take is just going, oh, he has regen. And you're like, good. Okay, I have 50 points or 100 points to spend on like the Staff of Damnation or stuff to do whatever. But it just seemed oversight.
I was thinking about that actually the other day. Like, how would you fix it? And either, you'd give huge creatures a regen save. Dwarves clearly would just get around that because everything they touch is flaming.
Yeah.
Or you could do like for monsters, cannon shots only do D3 wounds. I don't know how you would work that out, but
that's how we fixed it in my tournaments. Remember when I ran a couple of tournaments at the bunker in Sunderland, we changed it so the cannons are D3 wounds, and it's not perfect, but it's enough. So it means that you're not guaranteed to, you don't have that chance of wiping out Malekith in one hit with a very lucky wound roll and a very lucky
more
shot.
Inclined to bring a monster if that was the case.
Yeah.
But that was going to bring me on to, you are a veteran TO. Which is the first one I've ever
like
had.
4 of them or 3 of them or something.
4 more than I've organised. How do you find running tournaments?
I find it really fun, but I don't like actually playing on the day because I don't think people realize how busy you are running a tournament. Like, I think a lot of people think that they're just going to sit there being like, oh, I'll just get a book out, or oh, I'll play a game kind of thing, or oh, I'll be the extra one if someone doesn't show up. And then you just go, no, you have to constantly be sort of marking up score sheets because you don't want people to like sit around. So between rounds where you sort of, if you're doing what's it called? The method we use where it's basically you get matched up depending on how well you're doing.
So Swiss pairing.
Yeah, the Swiss pairing.
Yeah. I like that one actually. That's
I think it's really good, but I do I like the idea of, I think, is it Triple Crown where they kind of give everyone, they go, hey, what point value is everyone on? Like in terms of how tough their list is. And then they go against people with matching scores.
That's how they do it at the start. And then it balances out in the second, doesn't it? If you get destroyed, then you won't play against someone of that level the next round.
Because I think I made it totally random. I think I made it totally random for the first battle round, and then for later rounds, it's against like how well you're doing. But the problem there is that you got someone who had like a fucking, Blender Lord, 3 Terrorgeist list up against someone who's got a little fluffy dwarf army with no cannons, and you're like, right, you're fucked. Whereas it's like the wonderful thing about the Triple Crown system that I only got used to it after the last tournament I did, and while there was many more planned, COVID, yay.
Yeah, can't mention that, demonetized.
Demonetized. Well, I've said fuck quite a lot.
Yeah, but I can beep that.
Beep everything I say. But and it's annoying, but I do like the idea of going, oh, you brought a beardy as fuck list. Well, one of you has to lose, like out of the two of you, and then that kind of puts people on the back foot for the rest of the tournament. And I think that's quite a nice way of doing it, because ideally I don't want people coming with tournament lists, and I've added like handicaps and stuff into my tournaments in order to kind of get people to have more fluffy things. I think that's more fun.
Yeah, I played last year, it must have been the year before, I played a casual 40k tournament, and the way they did it, I don't know how they did it, but it was good. They acknowledged that people are always going to bring like game-breaking lists. So somehow they did it. So after the first round, all the people with the game-breaking lists were paired up against each other, and everyone had brought the casual, less devastating lists. I don't know how they did it, but it worked, and it was. I didn't feel like I was steamrolled at any point. So that's sort of the thing TOs have to be, even before they've. It's the first thing to decide, how am I going to run the.
It's kind of tough in 40k, because while I think we're in disagreement here, but I loved 40k 8th edition. I think that's I got into it in like 2nd edition, and then sort of played a bit of 3rd edition, and then like went to high school and all that lark. And so came back to it in 7th edition and was like, this is a massive pile of shite, because I didn't play Space Marines. And if you didn't play Space Marines and Eldar in 7th edition, you didn't win. It's like I had Tyranids, Dark Eldar, and I started a Genestealer cult when they came out. But despite being a new book, they were still useless. So it was,
Well, Tyranids, again, they were written by someone who hated them for some reason. Every edition after 6, they got weaker and weaker and weaker.
It's so weird. And you literally sort of like, you just need to look at the internet and be like, look, there's loads of people with like actual good solutions for how to fix Tyranids. And then they're like, nope, we're going to make it so they're weaker now. Because wasn't there like just a recent FAQ that made them even worse?
Quite
There's
possibly.
Something mentioned at Christmas, and you were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, we'll depower this already underpowered list. I was saying this on a previous one that if they updated the model line, I'd buy them. But if you see them now, the Carnifex is slightly taller than a Primaris, and they just look like they are totally the wrong scale for where the game's gone. So if they fix that, I'll buy some and then worry about the rules later. But
I can't say anything because my Tyranid army is pure nostalgia. Mine is a 2nd edition Tyranid army, so I have the metal scythed Screamer Killer as my Carnifex.
Is it the greatest warriors ever on their square bases?
Actually, he's on round bases. I've put them on because I think it's with 40k and Age of Sigmar. No matter what anyone tells you, I think you have to have the right bases. It's like fantasy where you go like, hey, that unit needs a footprint that's this big because that's how the game plays. So I think, so they're all on the round bases, but it is good to think that 40k started off with squares.
I think it's
but everyone who's like, oh, squares are rubbish, they were just for fantasy. And it's like, Well, let me show you this copy of White Dwarf.
Yeah, the Avatar was on a square base. The
Yeah.
Tyranid Warriors were on a square base. I think
I
just because
think they were
didn't
just
know.
lazy. They didn't
Yeah,
want
I
to
think
get the mold out. They were like,
I
"Oh
don't
God, we
think
have to make another mold."
I don't think they knew what they were doing. Just stick it on anything. It'll be fine. What have we got lying around?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, second edition was the edition of vortex grenades, so they didn't give a shit anyway. You know.
Nah.
Oh, what's that?
Okay.
Oh, it's gone now.
Yeah, wipe that off. House rule bans on them and all sorts.
Oh God, it was a nightmare. I always used to have a Gene Stealer Magus who could take a war gear item, and it was always the vortex grenade. And then my mate was just like, "Oh, you killed everyone. Great.
Like
Thanks
if you
for
thought
playing."
Purple Sun was bad, and then
Yeah, that's it. It's like,
wait till you see this.
but,
I know
sorry.
a bit about what you were saying about like it's not just I'm waiting around for the results to come in and you're running a tournament. I did a mini fantasy tournament with 3 others at Warhammer World, and I was playing it as well. And I've got all this admin to do. I've got to play a game. I've got to work out who's winning. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is quite intense. So I don't know how you do it for like 15 people.
Well, it is. It's like tough, and the problem is, it's like a lot. We were very lucky that like fantasy has this wonderful resurgence kind of thing, and I think it's crazy to think that it's much bigger now because of Games Workshop's announcement of the old world, where you're getting people going like, I don't, like I'm going to start a fantasy army now, and then if the old world isn't what we think it's going to be, and it turns out to be like a weird Age of Sigmar type thing with like round bases or something, then everyone's like, oh well, I can just play fantasy then, and so and at the time before the old world was announced and before lockdown, there was we were getting about sort of 20 people attending, and that was the maximum amount the building could handle. And now that the bunker's like far bigger and he's expanded it, like we could probably have like 35 people coming for a fantasy tournament, and I'm like, that'll be great, but it's going to be horrible on the day because because everyone's going to have rule questions and they'll be like, oh, hang on, how does this work? And I'm just like, damn it, why are you here? Why do you not know the rules?
You might need a deputy at that point.
I think that's it. I think, to be fair, I might get like Steve like corrects me like a lot on rules because he knows his shit. He is like he's that thing where in the 80s and stuff, when you got hackers who could like hack into sort of big companies, and then the big company like sort of offered them a job because they were like, oh, well done.
Yeah.
Steve is that. I would have him in every tournament simply because he smashes everyone at tournaments, and I just be like, okay, how would you do this? You know all the rules. What identify this and stuff.
I played him at Leeds, and I'd killed. Who was he? Was he playing demons or something? And I bizarrely and unexpectedly killed like this. I forget who it was. It was some major character. Like, oh, I'm doing well here, and then lost.
That's how he gets you. He lures you into the false sense.
No, it wasn't demons. He was playing.
It was vampires, surely.
No,
the last time he did his like monochrome vampires.
No, it was. I don't want to say.
Was it halflings? He's had like 5 different halfling armies.
I can't remember. Whatever it was, I killed some major thing. Which that's good. That's going to be him knackered. Like, no, still lost.
Mm-hmm. He's a tough one, to be fair. It's like I think that my only chance against him is that I love chaos in games. So it's like
you can't account for.
Yeah, so it's like, oh well, all your tactics mean nothing because I've deliberately killed my level 4 wizard.
Yeah, get out of that one. What else have I got on my notes here?
Well, what I was gonna say about 40k is that there's a lot of stuff in 40k that I think is very difficult for tournament organizers, because like we have in fantasy, there's nothing broken. I don't think there's many things that are absolutely broken, and it's why the Banner of the World Dragon gets such a bad rep, because it's one of the items where you just go, that's really too good, and then the fact that gets picked out kind of points out that there's not that many things that are broken. Like a witch elf, like Death Star, that's really bad, but at least it takes up like 90% of your army doing like a cauldron and a hag and this and getting Hellebron and stuff. I
also think it sort of benefits in that it is a dead game and that the rules are now set in stone.
Yeah.
So everyone has a reasonable chance of knowing most of them anyway.
Yeah, I've given up with 40k. Like it's 40k. I was just like I had a handle on it, and now they've gone like we've changed it. Like Age of Sigmar was the same when I was still playing that because it kind of went like, hey, we've changed how terrain works, and you're like, oh, okay. And then 3 months later, they're like, we've changed it back to how it was, and you're like, right, okay. And then it goes, we've released a new book, but it has the old rules in it from like before, and you're like, oh, what am I? And it's like, hey, we've updated the app, but it's using a war scroll that's different to the book, different to the FAQ, and you're like, could you please get a handle on this? It's
they introduced ninth, and then I don't know how long ago after they went, oh, now we've got a new thing called core, which is another keyword to some of your troops, and if it's core, it's got these certain things. I don't think it's to do with OBSEC.
Yeah.
Like, well, that seems a big thing to miss out. Why didn't you just wait and print that in the main book? But whatever.
But that's it. I mean, someone, my friend Mick was telling me the other day, he was like, oh, Chaos Space Marines are better because they have 2 wounds now. And I was like, really? And he's like, oh, I just checked. No, they don't. I've misread the FAQ. And you're like, how can you misread something so dramatic? Like,
I did that with Flamers. Like Imperial Flamers got a range increase, but Chaos Flamers didn't. No, why?
Yeah, because who wants Chaos Space Marines to be good in the game? They're not real Space Marines.
No, you want Iron Hands. They're the best.
It's one of these things. It's like I'm not a fan of Space Marines. I really hate Space Marines, and it kind of hampers 40k for me because they've leaned so hard into it. Like, because obviously when I started, it was like, hey, the Imperium's this big thing, but look at all these other cool races and stuff. Look at the Tyranids and things like that. And and now they're kind of like it's Space Marines and friends.
They do provide, what is it, like 60% of their income.
Oh, it's one
financially you can see why, but it's like
one of those things. It's fully understandable from a company point of view, but it's annoying as a fan.
But then you ask, like, well, people only buy Space Marines, but that's because you only push Space Marines. So is it like a self fulfilling prophecy?
That's exactly it, and it's wonderful that Games Workshop are now listening to things. I mean, the new Slanesh releases coming out for Age of Sigmar are absolutely amazing, and it's got me sort of checking my phone and checking my windows because I think someone's spying on me because of how perfect they are. Because like I literally, because I run like a big Slanesh group on Facebook called.
That's not a euphemism, everyone. That's not a euphemism.
Oh, it is. Check out my OnlyFans at
that's my line.
Glory Baby. But no, and sorry, I run this big group, and all the stuff we're talking about there's I know a couple of people who work at Games Workshop, and you go, wow, this probably has gone straight to the designers, or that we were so on point with what we believed Slanesh was all about, and that's what the designers have done, because we were all complaining that there wasn't like gluttony, like it was literally it was all like sexy or savagery. There was no sort of all the other stuff where it was like because essentially Slanesh is the deadly sins, and now we've got this amazing gluttonous guy on a big chariot who's not that expensive. It's like this huge model, and it's like I think it's coming out on Saturday, pre-order on Saturday for like 75 quid, and you're like, that's cool when that awful techless model is like 105 or something. But you're literally just like, oh, it's a Sphinx and a stuck a bloke on, and you're like, that's no one asked for that.
I like his MC Hammer parachute pants. So.
I did it. I think when it got announced, I trolled someone by basically photoshopping it into a picture of people doing the YMCA like letters. Because I was just like, this is techless. Why does he have this haggard old man face and MC Hammer pants? And like, couldn't they have tied him into the Sphinx? It just seems weird. It's like, call me cynical, but it's like when we have loads of releases that are really good and you go, wow, you really care about the fans and you're doing something and this is great fan service and the price is fair, then the whole Luminef thing is like this very like, hey, here's 5 horsemen for 36 quid. And they look weird, like, and then here's Techless, and we haven't really spent much time with him. We've just gone, how can we make Techless cost £105? Oh, we'll give him a big beast. Yeah, cool. And how are we going to tie him into the beast? Oh, we're going to have him riding. No, we'll just stick him on.
Well, it says like, he's such a that whatever it is, it's its own sentient being, so he wouldn't ride it because he's got too much respect for it or something like that. Well, have
then
him,
give it a different unit. Sell it as a different model. Sell him as like a 10 quid clan pack.
Yeah, that's fine. Put him, standing on the ground next to him or something. Just hovering next to him just looks. I don't like it.
It's very weird, and it's
an odd choice.
But I forgot what we were talking about before. But it was the idea of like that's my tech list rant. But it's wonderful with the Slaanesh stuff that it's so on point, and I really want loads of it. I mean, I need to confirm first that it'll fit on squares, because obviously I've given up on Age of Sigmar, but it would be great to get the, what are they called? Something silly and copyrightable. What is it? Myrmidesh Painbringers or something. You know, so something where they've obviously typed it into a search feature and gone like, oh, what doesn't exist yet? What doesn't have a copyright on?
Trademark that.
Yeah, you know.
So you've given up on AOS because you sort of, although didn't like it, but you still had a foot in AOS, and
I followed it for a while because I was hopeful. Like AOS was a real shame, because when fantasy died, like the end times was amazing, because like, you know, fantasy had all kind of died off like in my area, because, you know, I got back into it at the end of 7th edition, beginning of 8th edition, and then had like 5 amazing years of fantasy, but where there weren't many players because it's a hard sell. Like, you know, how were you supposed to get new players in where, you know, it's the era of like the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, and you're going, hey guys, do you want to pay like 300 quid on models, and then 100 quid on paints, and then 50 quid on a rule book, and then 30 quid on an army book, and all the tools and stuff like that, and then spend like months of your life painting all these guys so you can play this game with me? Or do you want to buy a PlayStation 3? And you know, and it was a very, very hard sell because of the amount of models you needed for fantasy.
That's the problem. That's why, unfortunately, everything I love about fantasy are the reasons it's dead. It's just a awkward thing. Such a high cost of entry. Horde rules means you've got to have, you know, if you want to win, you've got to have big units, and this is too expensive.
Well, that's it. And, you know, and Games Workshop didn't help because, you know, Games Workshop, they're much better. They're so much better than they were back when fantasy was a thing, because their whole strategy was kind of going, oh, no one's playing fantasy because we're not really doing anything with it. And we're kind of just going, oh, Space Marine sells, so we're just focusing on 40k. Right, okay, well, we'll make it more expensive then. That'll get more people in. And so, you know, they released like the new Witch Elves, and they're like, okay, cool. So these effectively work in units of 40, and we're going to make them £30 for 10 of them. And then they need a cauldron, and the cauldron, what's a good price for the cauldron? Because it's, you know, it's about the size of a screaming belt. We're going to make it 60 quid. Or something, and you know, is it 60 quid? It's like 45 or 60 quid. It's ludicrous.
And that's one unit.
Yeah, and you just go, oh, cool. That's 400 points. Cool. So you need another 1,600 points, and you're sort of sitting there being like, and everyone's like, why did fantasy fail? Oh, is it because people weren't interested? Is it because the rules were rubbish? And you're like, why are we having this discussion? Like, it's really difficult though, because you want to support your stores. Because I have friends who work at like Games Workshops, and you want to go in and be like, hey, I want to contribute to your monthly quota, because the monthly quotas are awful, you know, where, you know, they kind of, it's that whole company thing of going, hey, you managed to sell this many last month, do it again.
That means you can get twice as many next month.
Yeah, and then it keeps building up. It's like councils having to spend their full budget in order to get the same money the next year, and you're like, well, that's a terrible way of doing it. You know, it's like there needs to be like a, you know, like an understanding of the needs of things, and going, hey, that was a fluky month, but you know, I want to support them, but you can't. Like, it's like, I'm not going to go into a store physically just to go onto their machine to order the direct only models, which is the only place where I can get like all of the stuff I use, so that it gets delivered to the store that I then need to go in. I'm like, or I could just order from home and get free delivery, you know, or order from Justin at the Battle Bunker, where he can get like 10% off because he's like a flag store. Is it what they call flagship stores? I don't know. Like third party seller,
yeah, affiliate or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, and then get 10% off. And when you're buying like sort of like 3 boxes of Witch Elves, you're like, oh, that's like 9 quid. That's all right, you know, better than nothing. And it's difficult because you can't support stores, because Games Workshop are like, oh, well, no, we don't put those on the shelves anymore, or, you know.
And you get them, if you do get them, they're in the generic like no frills white box, like
yes. Well, it's a crime. It's a crime on ink. You just give me a printed box. We have people. We had some. I was ordering because I'm stupidly started a Noblar's army, which we were discussing in the chat, and I think it's a doomed project because I've realized how many Noblars I would actually need for a 2,000 point list because they are 2 points each, I think.
So have you got some gold to sell to fund this?
I think I might have to start the OnlyFans actually in order to fund this. But, all that delicious YouTube gold.
I'll put the link below. Anyway, I'll not do the how did you get into the hobby thing because we've done 40 minutes of random chat, which is that'll do. I'm happy with that. We decided to go for villains. And I specifically said, don't do the edgelord thing and say, "Oh, Finnebar's the real villain." But I suspect you might have.
I will admit, because when I was writing down the list of villains, 40k is weird because I don't really pay much attention to 40k lore anymore because, I don't like Space Marines, and try finding a Black Library novel that doesn't involve Space Marines in some way. I mean, I got an Orc one where the promise was hey, it's what's it called? Cunning Plan? Is it? No. It's very good. But it's really good. And then it just goes, oh, and now here's chapters about the Imperium. And then it's got Adeptus Mechanicus and stuff. And I'm like, shut up. Don't care. Just give me Orcs. Just give me an entire book that's all from the Orcs' perspective. Give me a whole book where it's just the Tau, where it's just Necrons. Stop having to put the Imperium in. Because it makes it very difficult to get invested in the lore when you don't enjoy half the characters.
That's a fair point.
So there's not many 40k people on my list. It's mainly fantasy.
I've got 3 fantasy and 2 40k. I've gone a bit off piste with this because I didn't want to pick anyone too obvious. I find this really difficult. I don't know whether it's because it's both series are grim dark. The villains aren't necessarily all villainous, and they've got might have some.
Do you think this might be because you're a Space Marine player and you're also a High Elf player, and it could be that thing where it's if you can't see the annoying person at the party, then it means it's you. Possibly. You're the real villain.
That could be the case. But, if it is, I'll cut it out. So I've gone a bit with. Did you? I found this really difficult. And the last one, I went through a couple of choices before I picked one, which I was quite happy with. Did you have any honourable mentions, or did you find it?
I do. I had one that was an edgelord. I had one. I had 2 that are edgelords ones, and obviously one of them is Belshazzar, the pretender Phoenix King,
right,
stealing Malekith's rightful place.
Yeah.
Apparently. It's odd though, because obviously doing all the Dark Elf lore and reading it more thoroughly than I did, back when I sort of got the book. It's the idea of there's loads of Phoenix Kings where it's a bit it's insult to injury because they're a bit crap. So you've got people like Aethys where they're a bit of a dickhead. And
it's just a bit wet, isn't he, Aethys?
Well, that's it. It's one of these things where they just kind of, you have ones where you're like, oh, okay, they're amazing. Is it Finnebar's the 8th edition one?
He's the current one, yeah.
Yeah. And, he's amazing because he's doing all this stuff and he's going, hey, we're going to trade with other lands and we're going to do this and we're going to build the empire and we're going to help the world. And then Aethys is I'm going to do some macrame.
Exactly.
I'm going to, let's build another temple.
We'll disband the army. We'll spend the money on a poetry competition.
And it's that kind of thing where you just and Malekith's there being should be my job. Should be me, and it's difficult not to look at him and just be actually, you probably should be in charge. You probably should have a crack at this.
They do pick a few odd choices. The council princes.
Because I had Belshazzar in it, and I've forgotten because I didn't write down who the other honourable mention was, but I think it was someone who was a bit too obvious. I think it was Sigvald the Magnificent. Because
I thought you would pick him because
I love Sigvald the Magnificent. He's one of my favorite things. I'm so glad that they're bringing him back, even though he's ludicrous demon prince size and has horns stuck on. and I'm surprised they haven't changed his name to something copyrightable. But I absolutely love him. But when I think about it, he's not a villain. He's just a dickhead. He's just a narcissist. And on my list, it's been very difficult because what I class as a villain is someone who is evil with intent.
Yeah, that was hard.
Because the problem is in 40k and like chaos, like so the Tyranids and chaos, they're not evil. Like they're not villains because that's all they know. Like it's their nature. It's like you wouldn't say, oh, a wasp stings someone, therefore it's a villain. It's like going, well, no, that's kind of what wasps do. They're just dicks.
Yeah.
So I've tried to think of people who are genuinely who have the choice to kind of go either way. And with Sigvald, he's not evil. He's like, I want to do this, so I'm going to do this, and that's that. You know, he's like, oh, I'm bored of this village, so I'm going to burn it down. Or oh, this guy like looks ugly to me, I'm going to kill him. And it's not villainous. It's not. He's not evil. He's just It's the same with the Chaos Gods. They're just doing what they know.
That. Burning down villages isn't evil. I did a total edgelord thing for my honorable mention, which is Age of Sigmar for killing fantasy.
The true villain of fantasy.
Yeah, the real villain. Do you want to go first then, or shall I?
I'll go first, and I've got like this is my odd off the wall one. This is my lots of people will probably not agree and think, oh well, there should have been someone better on this. But I'm going to go. We've already mentioned him. I'm going to go with Moonclaw.
Ooh.
For Beastmen. And he's an odd choice, but it's simply this idea of what he represents to the fantasy world, even though he's just this random little special character that they stuck into, like, you know, the 8th edition fantasy book. He's essentially a Lovecraftian horror. Like, he's a meteor falls from Morsleep, like a warpstone meteor falls from Morsleep, hits the earth, cracks open, and it's an egg, and then this creature crawls out of it, that looks kind of like a beast man, but isn't. Like, it's like totally alien. And then all the beastmen just go, oh, you look a bit like a weirdo, so you must be one of us, yay. And then he just talks in his own language. He's irreparably insane. And then all he does is try to tear down religious monuments and, desecrate sort of desecrate sacred sites. And he's not chaos. He's not chaos. He's not of this world. And I like the idea that in fantasy, where the idea of demons and stuff is so normalized because of chaos, we just have this alien who's, you could totally roll with it and have like this whole like, you could have him like infecting like the Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing, have him like infecting other races and sort of, and then having an army that's basically all, dark elves that have been corrupted and are fighting alongside like orcs that have been corrupted and stuff, and they're all part of this alien body snatchers kind of thing. Like,
sounds a bit like the Blob, how that turns out.
Yeah, and I love the idea of just going, because he's an alien intelligence that just destroys everything, and yeah, I love that, and I think it's nice just to have this little sort of, oh yeah, and here's a thing that happened as well, and you're like, could you elaborate on that? That sounds amazing.
I'd never heard of him before.
Before my obsession.
Before you played Alan, so he's just some alien egg that landed on the Warhammer world.
Yeah, he did, like a meteor fell to Earth, like how we have with Mordheim, where a big warpstone meteor hits the Earth. Like one of them just fell in like, where is it? It's near Britain. It's the Beastmen, forests near Britonia and the Empire and stuff. And basically, he just fell to Earth, leveled everything, and then it was an egg, and he came out of it. And you're like, is there an intention there? Is there another god leading this, or is Morsleep conscious?
And I was going to say, so what's his plan then? What's his?
It seems to just be destroyed. But then you go, what if there's not? What if there is something like a thing where he's like trying to take over? I think it's this idea of he might not be a villain yet in the lore, but I would love to elaborate on it and be like, he is like a harbinger of something far more terrifying that's not chaos, that's not Nagash.
So he's almost like a fantasy Tyranid then?
Kind of, yeah. I think he's more like I think he's more Lovecraft. So he's more the, like the sort of horror from the stars, like, because Tyranids are very alien based, like, the film Alien. Whereas I think sort of Lovecraft is more the kind of unspeakable horror because it's so different to what we know and stuff.
So that's
Eldritch
just
horror.
like, so that's something there's something even worse coming behind it.
Yeah, like, and that's it. And we kind of go like, hey, here's the Warhammer world. Oh, it's the good guys, the forces of order against chaos, and then you got Nagash in the background being like, I don't care who wins because I win. But
So it's almost like another faction of.
yeah, like it's like and I'd love to have that, like, have like a non-aligned force, because I think Kings of War have it. I think Kings of War have an army. It's a bit of a cop-out army, but it's like where basically goes, hey, they can control other races, so you just use units from other races in this, and it's like going, you don't have the model range, do you? But but then again, Kings of War is great because it allows people to just go, I'm going to use this My Little Pony, and that's my dragon. There we go.
So what's
Hey,
his
is that great?
what's his greatest hits then? Has he destroyed much of Bretonia or
He's
anywhere
literally,
that
it's
might
just
matter?
one page. It's just one
Right.
page. We don't know how he fits in the context of things. I think he might be mentioned in the timeline, like on the Beastman timeline, but they didn't, because it was like they didn't get an 8th edition book. It's kind of pre
Oh,
the
yeah,
very
of course.
dedicated history sections. But the fact is, I like him because of his potential to be a villain. Yeah.
What's his rules like then? Because
Awful. He's bloody terrible, but that's why I love him.
that's a trend of most special characters, isn't it?
He has, what does it have? He's a level 1 wizard who can take like Law of the Wild, or is it Law of Shadow? Yeah. He can ride on his steed Umbralock, which is a big beastie thing that it doesn't really go into detail with. It just goes the great mutated beast Umbralock. That basically just makes him easier to shoot. Because you don't want to put him into units, because his special ability is that at the beginning of every turn for both players, every unit within 12 inches of him needs to take a stupidity check, because he drives them insane. So obviously, if you put him into a unit, they have a very high chance of not doing anything that turn and just being stupid, especially with Beastman's leadership. So you're just like,
Oh, a mighty 7, is it? Oh.
yeah, so it's kind of like going, okay, this is a total gamble, but I love the chaos of it. Like, I love the idea of just the entire army like mutating around him and everyone else just like going nuts. And because when you get him to the enemy, it's great because obviously like he makes all of the enemy units stupid and stuff, but it's getting him there without him being shot, because I don't think there's any units he can join if he's on Umberlock, because technically he's cavalry, but there's no way you could model it on a cavalry base. So I kind of I put him in with dogs, but then because he's immune to his stupidity. But obviously, if
Well,
you
at
put
least
him
they've
into a
covered
unit,
that.
he's not. So it's basically so a lot of the time I've had it where it's going, hey, he's in a unit. Oh, the unit fails, so he can't do anything. Great.
So
But
you picked the self-harm special character for your first choice.
yes, that's it. It is. It's the
Right. Is he described then, or is it just like in the old 4th edition where you would just get a name and a profile and that was it?
No, he's described. He has like a full page description where it talks about like what I've mentioned so far and whatnot. But you can tell that they just added him to the book because he doesn't have a model. He has one bit of artwork. I'm speaking with a friend at the moment who's an actual artist to get some proper Moonclaw art done, because the only art of him is like a John Blanche like sketch. And obviously, you know how they are, like in the Chaos Demons book, where they're not detailed. They give like a silhouette and they give like the sort of vagaries of it. And,
Yeah.
but you don't kind of go, oh, what's his eye color? What's this? Or stuff like that. And so I'm trying, I'm getting like a sketch, like a proper drawing of him done, just so we can kind of flesh it out and be like, what if he looks like this? Like, what if this is how Moonclaw looks? And then hopefully I can expand on it with like fan rules and stuff.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's all sorts of like neglected characters and things. Well, there's Beastmen are sort of a neglected faction.
Yeah, like all of them.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Yeah. What's your first?
My first, you might like this one, is Hellebron.
I didn't even think about Hellebron, but then you're just like going, she literally murders everyone. She's like,
I thought about Malekith and I thought about Marathi. I thought they're obvious choices. Because Hellebron's basic background is she's some daughter of some elven lord. She really likes Marathi and wants to be part of her inner circle. She has to join the inner circle. Marathi says, "No, you've got no magical talent whatsoever. You're useless, whatever." So she joins the cult of Cain.
You're making the cult of Cain sound a bit, or like the sorceress of Gron sound a bit like Mean Girls. Is that how you imagine? Like,
isn't
Marathi?
That? Yeah. She's got
you can't sit with us, and she's like
Marathi's like the cheerleader, and she's the nerd girl who they tart up towards the
nerd girl the nerd girl who is like, what is it? Weapon skill 10, strength 10.
Yeah,
like.
So she joins this cult of Cain. Ushers out the previous priest of Cain, saying, "You're not extreme enough."
We say usher.
Well,
do we mean murder?
Yeah, murders. I didn't realize she introduced the fighting with basically wearing nothing technique. So she's good at that.
If you've got it, flaunt it.
Exactly. So she knows what she's doing. She kills her own mother, who says, "This Cain thing's gone a bit too far, Hellebron. You might want to rethink it."
Calm down, dear. Have a cup of tea, rethink it.
Kills her. Her in the Sundering and all that, she gets eventually defeated by Kalidor and sent off to Nagaroth. But the reason I picked her rather than Malekith and Marathi is because Malekith and Marathi use Cain as just an excuse. Like, oh, actually, we're all in favor of Cain. He's the real one, and Ami's avatar or whatever. Hellebron really believes it. She's been part of this cult from the start, and she's got she's got the fervor of the zealot. So she thinks she's doing this. She's a real believer, whereas I don't think Marathi and Malekith are. I think they just use it as a tool of political control.
It's a weird one because I don't think the episode's out, but I've just read the 7th age of the Dark Elves in the latest episode that I'm editing at the moment, and it goes into the weirdness of Cain, like as a deity, because like all he cares about is murder. Like so there isn't like a proper way to worship him except for murder people,
killing field.
And so I think Malekith kind of is like a fervent worshipper, but because he wants to murder, so it's like a sort of quite a good deal, really. Because I think there's a story of Quran Darkheart, is it?
He's the Blackguard captain, isn't he?
Yeah. And I've forgotten his surname. I've just read it. And Quran is on an expedition, and they lose the favor of Cain because they haven't killed anyone in a while, and they haven't sacrificed anyone in a while. So he has to kill his own troops in order for Cain's favor to come back to them. And then they win the battle. But then he's like, "Oh, I have 10 guys left. Time to escape." And I think it's him, or is it? Is it him, or is it Talaris Dreadbringer? It might be Talaris Dreadbringer.
Talaris is the executioner guy, so it's probably...
It might be him.
Yeah.
But it's this idea, and that was him fighting on a murder quest with Hellebron herself. And it's wonderful to have these tangible gods, like the idea that there's genuinely a god who will help you out, rather than like the Empire, where it's like a speculative god, where they kind of believe that Sigmar's a god, and they're praying, and then things are happening, but they don't... Sigmar's not interacting with the other gods, whereas the Elven Pantheon are like, "Hey, we're just going to go and troll Slanesh for a bit," or "Oh, we're just going to go and have a chat to Moor and whatnot." And it's...
But that's another reason is what you're saying about killing their own people. Death Knight, we're very on the cusp of extinction as a race entirely. If you build up the Wood Elves, High Elves, and Dark Elves, you take them all together, we're on the way out. As the Dark Elf faction, we're like a remnant of the High Elves. Yeah. And then we're going to dedicate a day to murdering our own people.
It is terrifying. Because I didn't even consider Hellebron, because I kind of see her as a bit of a tragic character, because she's because Marathi is treated her so badly, and she's kind of and like you say, she is a bit deluded, where she's kind of like, hey, Cain loves me and stuff, and I'm like the bride of Cain, and Cain's just like, don't know who you are, but keep killing.
No idea. Wait, what do you mean cauldrons? I never made any cauldrons.
Just to stab someone. I don't give a fuck. What with all the ceremony? Just murder.
Yeah, because Morathi screws her right over. Like, oh yeah, there's a cauldron. Bathe in this for eternal with an asterisk next to it.
And then it's done like a Dick Dastardly thing where she's sort of like sneaking away, being like, little does she know, Trixie Morathi.
It only works for like a couple of months now, doesn't it, to keep her young, and then she turns back into a ancient crone for the rest of the year. But she can't. She's trapped. She can't say, "I'm not having the take your gifts back. I don't want them." She's bound to Morathi now, because if she takes them back, like, well, just a horrendously old elf who apparently can still kick ass.
Like if we talk about rules, Hellebron is what I would class as the strongest fighter in all of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition.
Oh, it's insane.
She's not the best character, because obviously she's a glass cannon. She has no armor. She only gets a ward save if she's in a unit with like a black cauldron, a cauldron of blood. Sorry. But the fact is, like, her profile, what is it? She's like weapon skill 10. She's like weapon skill 10. She has like,
she's got poison.
She has 6 attacks, 6 attacks, plus 2 for frenzy, plus D3 because of her weapon, and then she's got paired weapons. She's basically 7 to 10 attacks, 8 to 10 attacks.
Oh, strikes first, re-rolling
always wounds on 2s.
Yeah,
and I think she does D3 wounds as well or something. So she's an absolute beast. And so you just go, she could probably one-turn Archeon or Nagash, if they were bad on their ward saves.
As long as
as soon as they attack back, so if she, because obviously if you had Hellebron versus a lone monster, that monster is dead. That character is dead. But then if it's against a unit, then there would be no player that doesn't go, okay, you've killed my lord. The unit is going to all attack, Hellebron now. She's got 2 wounds and no armor save. Great.
Still toughness 3. It's not.
Ooh, toughness 3.
Can't penetrate that elven toughness. But that sort of matches her. The theme of the witch elves, and she's the top witch elf. It's reflected well in her rules, I think.
That's it. I didn't think about her because I think of her a tragic character, but you're right that she's probably murdered thousands of people, over thousands
of her own people.
Anyone, the story I was talking about with her and Talaris is that she just goes, "Oh, we're kind of running out of people, so we're going to need loads of orgies to get loads of newborns and stuff and rebuild the population because we went a bit crazy last Death Night. Okay, well, let's go to other lands and just murder everyone we see."
I don't know why anyone lives in Harganeth. Where's the perk? Like once every year, you've got to barricade your house into a fortress in case witch elves come.
It was the purge before it was cool.
Yeah, that's basically. Right. Yeah. And then they throw in children. They throw the male children into cauldrons of blood, and if they survive, they become assassins. And they kidnap the girl children to take to become new witch elves, and all this infrastructure, all this, as you saying before, like Kane's like whatever, and there's got all this infrastructure that she's behind, and it's like I think that's why she's villainous, because she's the dark elves were depending on whose opinion you take, a bit bad, but she seems to have picked up the ball, seen an opportunity at the start of the dark elf nation and just ran with it, and we've got this, we're now following Kane, and here's how it's going to be done. And it's like, this is horrific. I would not like to live there.
I think it's that thing of how long does an excuse last for? So it's like, Morathi tricked you, and you're not forever young and stuff, and you're like a haggard crone for most of the year. You've killed a lot of people. How many people does it take until that excuse stops working?
And you're still no closer to getting one back on Morathi. So why did you do it?
No, I like it. I like the idea of Hellebron, and I'll probably be fielding her, but I don't expect it to last very long.
It's that famous, infamous mini wargaming. Have you seen it? Where that's the one where he takes the ward save and the regen save for the. Anyway, but he does use. Yeah, but he just murders his way through dwarfs. And you're like, this is toughness 7 dwarf lord. Like, yeah, dead.
That's it. You've got to be at least this high to win this battle, I'm afraid.
Just what you're going to do? Avoid it. I played it at. You went to the one at Worcester, didn't you? Like 2 years ago.
Yes, I think I did.
Yeah, I played against it there, and all I could do was like, I had the White Lion Horde. Like, I don't fancy the chances there. I just avoid it.
Yeah. I think that's it. Like I find that very good in 8th edition, where basically, yes, you can put tons and tons of points into a Death Star, but then if the enemy ignores it, like with Undead, you just go, "That's great. Here's 100 zombies."
Yeah, chew through that,
and then you're like, "Hey, great! So that's you held up for the game, because and that's what I found myself doing. I found myself in 40k where people had like in 8th edition where they had like 7th edition where they had like Necron Lich Guard units where it's like, oh, it's got like a 3-up save and then like a 3-up rerollable ward save or something, and then the Lord was ignored all wounds and they bounced to the guys next to him and stuff. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll just ignore them then.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, that's like 3/4 of your army in one unit.
Just take the rest of it and ignore that.
Yeah, you can still win that way.
Yeah, that was mine. Hellebron. I thought she was sufficiently villainous, killing her own people, starting a murder cult based on just because she thought she would, being a general.
I think we need to be more understanding. I mean, everyone's got their reasons for starting a murder cult and murdering thousands of men, women, children, babies.
It's probably hundreds of thousands, the amount of time she's been alive now.
But I think that's the weird thing, because it was like someone was pointing out, like someone asked on one of the groups, like, oh, who's the oldest like being in Warhammer, in the Warhammer world? And they were like, oh, Nagash. And you're like, no. Nagash is like, what is he like by the end times? He's like 2,800 or something. He's not particularly. Is it maybe older than that? Maybe like maximum sort of like 4,000 years or something.
He's younger than Cetra, so
yeah,
he's a lot younger than Cetra. So no,
that's it. Because Cetra was already dead by the time I think Nagash.
Long dead, yeah. Because Nagash is like the last king of Kemmler before it all went tits.
Before it kind of went a bit
iffy.
New plan, but
yeah.
And and then you look at it and you're like, I think named character wise, like that's still in the game, it's probably Marathi.
Yeah, like, I think it is. It's either her or
because she's ludicrous. She's like 8,000 years old, because it gets a bit vague that far back.
You're not entirely sure how old she is, because she's rescued, in inverted commas, from a Slaneshi warband by an Angron.
Yeah.
So yes, other than say Lord Mazdamundi, who could probably be older than her, but you don't know.
That's the weird thing though, because the lizard men, didn't they come after the high elves? So like the lizard men were sort of like like a, hey, we're doing this, because we don't know when Mazdamundi was, whether he was of the first birthing of.
I think he's
the lizard men.
He's the most senior one left of the second spawn, I think. So the lizard men taught the high elves magic when they were all fluffy, but it's very iffy as to when that all intersects. So she could still be.
It's weird to think about, and you just kind of go like, if you're killing 10 people, even if we just go 10 people a year, and you've been around for that long, same as Hellebron, where you just kind of go, okay, so how many people die on Death Knight? Probably about like 700 people get sacrificed and put in the cauldrons, and you go, cool, that happens every year, and you've been around for 4,000 years.
That's all adding up.
That's it. You just get sitting there. Okay, yeah, I accept that. I accept that Hellebron is a villain and not a hero, because those babies were evil anyway.
Hellebron did nothing wrong.
That's it. Hashtag Hellebron. Hellebron was right.
I don't support this. What's your next one then?
my next one is, I'm annoyed that he's so low down on the list, but I had to think about it, is my favorite character in all of Warhammer Fantasy, Heinrich Kemmler.
Oh, the Lichmaster.
Yes, the mighty, mighty Lichmaster. He is my favorite character in all of fantasy, and I think he's probably the oldest character in like rules wise, because I think he's the only character, because I think you had like the what was it called, like Drachenfels? I think you had Drachenfels before, when it was like 3rd edition fantasy or 4th edition fantasy, and I think Heinrich Kemmler was like 1989 when Wrath of the Lichmaster came out. And so he had a crap model. I didn't like it at the time, but then they had the new one, which is still the model,
Yeah,
because that lasted like 30 years.
The new one from the early 90s?
Yeah.
With these bat stuff.
That's it. I love it, the little skull stuff. But he is, yeah, I think he's a good example of someone who is intentionally evil and actually dangerous. Like, it's not just like a guy plotting in his house being like, oh, one day I'll show them. He's like, and I think it's range. You know how we were saying with Moonclaw, where we don't know what he's done. We don't know if he's bothered Bretonia or if he's like attacked the High Elves. Heinrich Kemmler has. He's fucked everyone up. Like, it's like all his life is just like, oh, he goes and beats Chaos up for a bit. Then he goes and does the Battle of Le Maisontal Abbey, and he kills the Duke of Montfort, and he goes and attacks the Empire for a bit, and then he goes and and then it's like if he ends up taking on like Tomb Kings and stuff, it's like he's very good. And the Wood Elves, the Battle of the Cairns, where he sort of takes on the Wood Elves in Athel Loren and actually gets away, which is terrifying. Yeah, well, it's one of these things where they're like, he just travels on his own. He's just like, I think that's what started me actually getting into Warhammer Fantasy. It might actually be that long ago that they had a battle report that was like Heinrich Kemmler. You know how we have big swathes of lore now that just started off as like the preamble to a battle report in White Dwarf, and then they've kind of rolled with it. I think there was like the Battle of the Cairns where Heinrich Kemmler was just this old man going through Athel Loren who'd like masked his like power and stuff, and the Wood Elves were like watching him, being like, "There's an old guy in the forest. Do we shoot him?" And everyone's like, "I don't know. He's just a weird old man. Let's leave him." And then Heinrich Kemmler sort of gets to the cairnstones, which foolishly the Wood Elves have gone, "Hey, all of the enemies that we've ever killed, we'll put them in one place under these cairnstones." And then obviously Heinrich Kemmler, yeah, that's it. And then Heinrich Kemmler gets there and he's like, "Ta-da!" and raises this fucking massive undead army in the middle of Athel Loren. And the Wood Elves like, oh, that wasn't expected. It's odd though, because Krell appears at some point. And I don't really like the fact that Krell's there, because it's like, how did he sneak him in? Was he in a bag? Did he have a rucksack with like this sort of 7-foot tall Chaos Warrior in? He's like,
unassembled.
That's like, that's going to take ages to reassemble a Krell. It's like IKEA instructions where they try to make it universal, so there's no words, so it's just pictures being like, oh, this is where you connect to the Chaos helmet. This is where you
what the books of Nagash are written in, just pictorial.
Just IKEA instructions with the nail it to a wall, because otherwise it'll fall down. Didn't see that coming.
Screw it in. So, what for those who might not know, what's his background? And is he pledged to Nagash, or is he just random?
That's the great thing about it. Heinrich Kemmler's like, he's in it for himself, but he's technically chaos. He's technically a chaos worshipper. Because his backstory is that he's just evil from the get-go. Like he was a young guy who started learning necromancy. And this is the scary thing, because it goes, he started learning it as a young man, and by the age of 40, he was able to raise, skeletons. And you're like, that's a commitment. Like we don't give necromancers the credence the credit they deserve, because it's like you get the impression that it's sort of like, an Empire guy is like, no, well, I went to school for 5 years, now I can use the law of fire.
Well, that's like the College of Magic are like a university, and he's like doing a correspondence course in necromancy, which might take a bit longer.
That's it. It's and then he sort of learns necromancy. I think he finds like one of the 9 books of Nagash, and then he learns necromancy, immediately starts attacking everyone, and pretty much beasts the world, because it kind of describes how he just takes on everyone. So he takes on all of the other undead rulers. So it has him fighting against like vampire covens. So he's fighting against multiple necroc sort of lords at once that are working together against him, and he beats them all and then steals their stuff and goes, "Hey, look at these fancy artifacts, they're mine now." And then takes on, and that's how he gets the title Lich Master, because he like actually kills a millennia-old lich. And it's just badass, because like he's just all out for himself, intentionally evil, but then everyone bands against him, so all of his enemies band together. They finally defeat him, and then he defeats them, but the force he has to use to defeat them shatters his mind, so he goes crazy. and then just kind of forgets who he is and stuff and stumbles off into the mountains. So he spends years stumbling through the mountains as a madman until he comes across the tomb of Krell, which is like a burial mound with like a plaque that Sigmar put there being like, hey, you were one of Nagash's general. We should probably destroy these bones. But no, let's carefully bury them and then sort of,
With
put a
big arrow pointing at
like a big
here.
Yeah, well, one of the blue circle plates we get in the UK where it goes like, oh, someone famous lived here. It's just one of them being like, oh, here lies Krell. He fucked a lot of people over. But you have, and then basically he's just like, he gets a glimmer of what he used to be, and he's like, this is really important, and there's loads of dark magic here. So he prays to the Chaos Gods to go, hey, I'll do your bidding if you give me my mind and powers back. And then they answer the call, and then he raises Krell back and then goes, oh, back in business. And then they get back to beating up Bretonnia. The Battle of Bazentol Abbey, I think he allies with the Skaven because they want an artifact. So he teams up with them because he just wants to kill Bretonnia. He's just like, yay, that's my... I think there's more reason to it, but, I can't remember.
So he's like totally, what's the word? Not mercenary, but like he's not aligned with a particular... He's purely for personal...
Yeah, and then in the end times, I know you don't like the end times, but I think there's a lot of amazing lore we can take from the end times, because I think it's like, I like it. I like end times in, I think it's like when it got to like the book Cain. Like we disagree, but I love the idea of actually Malekith was the chosen one all along. Because I think that's a wonderful twist. That's a wonderful arc of going, oh God, everything could have been so happy.
It's got nothing to do with the fact that you're a dark elf apologist.
Well, yeah, but I love that. But the problem is that's past the point of when the end times got silly. Like that's past the point of, I love that story thread. But in the Nagash book, we have Heinrich Kemmler working with Archon the Black and literally trying to undermine Nagash because he refuses to work for Nagash. He's like, nope, I'm my own guy. I'm not going to, I'm not going to just, when Nagash has come back, I'm not going to just worship him because essentially Nagash's goal is to go, hey, everyone needs to die so that I'm the only conscious thing in the universe so that I'm not in danger. And you're like, that's a weird flex, but we'll roll with it.
So is that like two wrongs making a right there for...
Well, yeah, I think it's just that Kemmler's just, he's out for himself. He's out for himself and he'll do anything. And I think it's that wonderful the intent to do harm and the ability to do harm that makes him such a good villain.
It's another one that I know he exists and I know the model, but it's like I've never really looked into him at all.
I think he's great. Like, and rules wise, he's kind of badass. Like, I think my most hated character. Pardon?
What does he appear in a Chaos book, or does he appear in the Undead?
No, he's Vampire Counts. He's like, because the great thing is, like, I've never really liked vampires. Like in I love the stories of them. Like I love, like the background to people like Neferata and Wasoran. Like Wasoran nearly made it into this list. Like the the progenitor of the Necrarch bloodline. Yeah. But he doesn't do anything. Like unlike Heinrich Kemmler, he's an evil bloke. He's a danger to the world, but he kind of just stays in his cave and learns necromancy and goes, oh, I found a way to fuse the soul to this weird construct. Ha 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 ha. And then doesn't attack anyone. And so, so he kind of just is behind the scenes. You think he's maybe pulling strings, but, he's just a bit ineffective. So he doesn't make the list. Whereas Heinrich Kemmler's like, he is dangerous. And he's, he's, like we say with Hellebron, killed a lot of people. And yeah, but and because when I started playing, it was when they had the unified undead book, where it was basically like a Tomb King's vampires, necromancers all together in one book. So you could kind of go, hey, I'm going to have like a mummy tomb lord or Cetra as my lord. And then I'll have loads of mummies in the army and then skeletons and then some zombies and ghouls and stuff like that. And that's when Heinrich Kemmler appeared along with Nagash and Dieter Helschnick. I don't know how you do that. I think Dieter Helschnick. And then when they split it up and they went, hey, Vampire Counts is a totally separate force and it's all about vampires, he was the only kind of way that a necromancer could lead your army, because I think it was like, oh, you have to have a vampire in the army unless you're using Heinrich Kemmler. Yeah, so it was kind of cool, and he's been there. I don't think there's an edition. I think there's one edition he's not in, and I think it's because they went, oh, we're gonna have Melchior, like the Necrarch guy, and I think it was like the Blood Dragon guy. I think it was it. It was only 2 special characters in the army book, and it didn't even have like Vlad and Isabella and Manfred and all the other staples. But it's a bit of a shame because rules wise, he's meant to be this amazing necromancer, and then he's worse than Manfred. And you kind of go like, why is Manfred so good at magic? Like, whoever did I think it was Matt Ward who did the 8th edition Vampire Counts book. Cough White's a bit broken. In terms of like, Blender Lords and stuff. And then crap if you don't do the broken stuff. And I think it's just like he had a total boner for oh no, it wasn't. It was it's the guy who spearheaded Age of Sigmar, I think, who came up with the book, who had a massive boner for Manfred and just went, oh, I'm going to make him amazing. And then out of lore, he just becomes totally the most amazing wizard in the entire world, even though in all of the books, he loses every battle he's ever in. And it's just like, it has him facing Archon the Black, and Archon the Black beasts him. And you're just like, that rules-wise, that doesn't make sense,
Just hand wave that.
Yeah, that's it. Whereas Heinrich Kemmler's like good rules wise because he can be ethereal, and you don't realize how important that is. Like, because magic weapons aren't too heavy. Like, obviously against demons, it's not really going to work. But then against demons, there tends not to be many shooting. So because Heinrich Kemmler's special ability is that at the beginning of every turn, he can go, am I going to be ethereal this turn, or am I going to have the fly special rule this turn? And so against demons, you could probably just have him flying around on his own and avoiding getting into danger. And then against anyone else who's not going to have a magic weapon, he's like, I'm ethereal, ho 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 ho, and I'm in like a unit of like 100 skeletons or something.
I've never played against them, and I've never actually seen him played, which is surprising for such a like well-known character.
I think I've played him a lot in the tournaments that we've been to, but I don't think we've ever been matched against each other when I was using him.
Not when you've used him, no.
Yeah.
But then if you're saying the obvious choice would be to play Manfred instead.
Wait, Manfred is just so good rules-wise. Like he's not a level 4, but he's a level 4. No, he's not a level 5. He's a level 4 who has what's it called when you're the master of a law?
He's got Law Master,
yeah,
Vampire Death and Shadow, is it?
Yeah, and then he has, and then he has more vampire abilities than you can pick. Like if you do a custom lord kind of thing, and then he has like 5 wounds. He's ludicrously good. Like, lore-wise, he should be like, lore-wise, I think he's better than Teclis, like, well, magic rules-wise. And then in the lore, it's like, isn't it that vampires can never be as good as mortals at necromancy? Like, isn't that the whole thing? Like, because in previous editions, it was always like, vampires are jealous of necromancers because necromancers fear death, and therefore they work that much harder. Like we're saying, Heinrich Kemmler spends 20 years working out how to raise skeletons, then another 30 years learning how to cheat death so he can stay around. And Vampire's like, well, I'm immortal, so I've got all the time in the world, so I'm not going to work too hard.
I'll do it later.
Yeah, and that's it. So in the rules and stuff, you had like vampires could never be higher than a level 3. And that was very rare for them to be a level 3. And that you had to have like a necromancer being the level 4, keeping your armies up big. And then like the Necrarch were like, hey, we're sacrificing most of our combat abilities in order that we can have 4 spells but still be a level 3 or something like that. And then, and then the amazing thing was that Manfred of von Carstein goes off and learns necromancy and gets really good at it. And you're like, cool, so he should be like, a level 4 vampire. That should be amazing. But he's not. He's a level 4 and lore master of like 2 different laws. And you're just like, yeah. Like,
why not?
Okay.
At this point, why not?
Yeah, so I don't understand the Manfred boner. And I don't understand why someone with so much... All of his lore is that he's like a sniveling coward. That he's like, oh, well, I'll get you, like, oh, well, I'll show you, he's like Grima Wormtongue. All of his lore points to him being like Grima Wormtongue. And then in 8th edition, they're like, yeah, he's bald, hench, and looks like a bat. And you're like, what? What have you been looking at?
And he can also tank a load of stuff in combat, which is
it's just very strange. It doesn't make any sense. Like, and I hate Manfred von Carstein for.
We're not on hate.
If I was competitive, I would take Manfred von Carstein because he's a great like choice for a lord. But fluff. Okay, sorry, yeah. But that was me talking about Heinrich Kemmler and bitching about undead in general.
That's fine. I think that's a worthy villain. My next one is from the world of Warhammer 40,000. It's the Primarch Angron.
Oh, right, okay. I think he's chilled out now. He's started taking up yoga.
Yeah, that's right.
He's doing some calming techniques, and I think he's more pleasant.
He's taking
supplements. I
was going to say diazepam, but
okay, well, yeah, they probably just drugged him up. To be fair,
could be the same. He is, for those of you who don't know, one of the Emperor's 20 sons. I like Angron because although he is a horrible person and the most brutal, murderous of the Primarchs, he does have some interesting features about him. His background is he lands on, I forget what the planet's called. He's the only Primarch that doesn't manage to conquer his planet or become the leader or someone of importance on his planet. So he's got that working against him.
Hang on. So Imperium's good and they're conquering planets.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just wanted to clarify that one.
Well, no, because all the Primarchs land on different worlds and they use their talents to like rise to the top of society. Like,
I get annoyed at this because like 40k isn't that the plot of Dragon Ball Z? Like, if you've ever watched Dragon Ball Z, where it's like you've got what they're called the Saiyans, and they send their children off in space pods, and then they land on a planet, and then their mission is to take over the planet. And you're like, it's literally the sort of Black Library just going, let's do that. Okay, we'll give Space Marines tails, and then under the full moon they transform.
They did steal from everywhere, so it's not. I'm not entirely
it just
surprised.
Seems really obscure. Like you have like the Nagash like references to like Sauron and stuff, and and then you just go like Dragon Ball Z. What?
That's why it's ironic that they are so jealous of their intellectual property because they've stolen stuff from everybody else, and now they're.
But that's it. Like reading the Dark Elf book, you're just like, wow, this is a lot of stuff that I've seen elsewhere.
Well, Tyrion and Alariel run away. It's just Terminator.
I hadn't picked up on that one. I will admit. That,
well, I read it like this is just Terminator.
that does suggest though that we get like, does Alariel ever sort of beef up and become like really sort of army savvy, and then
by the end she starts off as like a she's the new Ever Queen.
I don't remember the bit where she crushes like Malekith in a trash compactor.
She does,
or is it a Steelworks?
She said, "Yeah, it's in a hydraulic press."
Yeah,
says, you're terminated, fucker, and crushes him. then they retcon that you escaped to the
that one episode, chaos. That one issue with White Dwarf, but
yeah, it was in the errata at the back. Edition 92, edition 92 at the back.
Page 30. Age of Sigmar, where they just go, "Oh yeah, they came back," and you're like, "Well, this is great for tension." People just come back to life, right? Good.
I thought you were dead. Yes, but I lived.
So, apparently, bloody in Age of Sigmar, Balthazar Gelt is back. He's now a Stormcast because heaven forbid they could make new characters.
Wasn't he brutally murdered?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. There's no consequences. There's no consequences in Age of Sigmar because
death is just a temporary setback.
It's very weird, and they just go, "Oh, you might go mad," but I'm like, well, I was hoping to kind of die like once at most, so I think going a bit crazy over time. Like when we think about how many times has Malekith died, none. Right? Okay, so
yeah, that's usually death is. Nagash has done it twice, but
he's done it. Well, he's done it like. No, yeah, you're right. He does. He dies. Yeah, he's died like twice so far.
But he comes back, so it's not. There's a reason why he comes back.
While the consequence is the fact that he's like, because it takes him longer. Because I think it took him like sort of hundreds of years the first time, and then it took him like a full 1,000 to come back the second time.
Doesn't he come back less powerful each time?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah.
So there is this kind of thing of going, yes, he's the only guy that can safely come back in Warhammer Fantasy, but by the time he does come back, he's like less strong, and so you
there's a real cost to him coming back, isn't there?
Yeah, rather than just going like, oh, one of the gods said you can come back. It's like, oh, great, thanks. Anyway, sorry.
Yes.
Totally interrupting and going on a rant during your Angron.
That's fine. I'll put it in a rant outtake collection. So yeah, he lands on this planet. He's immediately enslaved and made to fight in a gladiator pit.
Failed.
Yep, exactly. This is a Primarch that the massive demigod.
I bet it was like Gretchen or something. He just lands on a planet. And they've got sharp forks, and he's just like, oh.
Yeah, it's a human planet, and they just, you're going to fight in the pit.
Yeah.
He gets mentored by this guy called Onomaeus, who, if you like your Spartacus lore, is the chief instructor at the Ludus that Spartacus escapes from.
And there's some kind of training montage, isn't there, where he's
I guess, and he's like always a father figure that he always needed, and then
maybe with some kind of homoerotic twinge to it. I don't know. Maybe
maybe in the Black Library you want to explore that.
I think that's the library. I think that's
possibly the authorities realize, because he keeps trying to escape, to say, right, you've got to fight this father figure to the death. And then they hammer the butcher's nails into his head, which slowly remove all of his brain's ability to have any sort of enjoyment and cause constant pain in his head unless he's killing people. So there's a bit of a...
I'm going to give them points for that. That's pretty specific surgery.
When
we think back on like the history of surgery, and we have like trepanning, where it's like going, we're just going to mess around a bit, it's
just hammer it into his head. It's a bit of archaeotech. They're not entirely sure how it works, but it does.
Well, that's the imperium, isn't it? Just like, I don't know how this works, but it's killing people, so
it'll work. So anyway, he does this big breakout, massacres a load of people in the city. His army is like 1,000 strong. They have this, they escape to some mountain or something. It's very much like Spartacus. The authorities send their army after him, and it's like, he's finished. Like, it's the night before the battle. The emperor comes down and says, right, you're my son. We're now going to go and conquer the galaxy. And Angron's like, can we not just help the people, like the people I've lived with and my only friends in the galaxy? The emperor says, nope, they are going to die. I've got bigger things to worry about.
So, good guy.
Can
you believe what it must have been like for the Emperor, where he sort of like arrives on this planet and sees his son looking like Vivian from The Young Ones?
He does say, right, the first thing he says is, what have they done to you? So that's what you want to hear from your dad, isn't it? The first time you see him.
Dad.
Yeah.
They understand me.
So the Emperor just leaves these, even though in other circumstances, similar circumstances, the Emperor has helped or chipped in, and is perfectly capable of saying, right, we'll reconquer this planet and we'll save your friends. He just says, nah. No,
there's no like, Star Trek justification of, we can't change the fate of this planet, or
no, it just doesn't want to.
Okay, good guy.
Not a waste of my time. So Angron says, well, I don't want any part of this, and the Emperor says, no choice. You're here now. There's your legion.
The Emperor's got a magnet, and he puts it to his forehead and just drags him back to the ship.
Well, he used the psychic might to teleport him out. Just him, not his friends. Just him.
Psychic might that could have helped everyone there.
They could have done it immediately. They could have landed and taken them up onto the ship, or they could have obliterated the planetary army. There's numerous things the Emperor could have done, and he doesn't. So that's sort of, Angron is a horrendous person, but there's all this going on in the background which sort of not excuses it but explains it. So he despises the Emperor, and then the Emperor puts him in charge of the World Eaters, and he just starts killing them. Like, I'm not like a spoiled child, like, right, I'm going to destroy me toys, even though the Emperor's given us it. So he goes through piles of the captains of the World Eaters, who are like begging to, please stop killing us. We are worthy of you. He introduces this thing where you've got, when they're used or they're given a mission, they've got 31 hours to conquer a planet completely, or he'll decimate the legion.
Can you imagine it with a countdown music or something? You know?
I think he's got that on his battle barge.
Just getting to the last vestiges of them, and it's like,
one from the top and three from the bottom. Angron. So that's the standard. What's his new series?
I like this idea of like the Emperor's like, why have my sons turned from me? And he's like, well,
see how you treat them. I think it's New Syria is the planet he's called. The New Syrian day is 31 hours long. So it's like you've got one day to conquer a planet. And if they don't do it, he decimates the Legion.
Yeah.
And they continually don't meet these high standards of 31 days.
Emperor, just saying.
Yeah. So he kills his own men.
Is the Emperor on your villains list?
I've done an episode on the Emperor, so he's not on my list.
Because I always thought that he was like, I've always thought, like, from the lore I knew, that the Emperor was a good person. Like,
oh no,
that the Imperium's gone way too far. Like, you know, because I think that if the Emperor came back, he'd probably do the good thing. Like, he'd probably sort of put things right, but that they're actually stopping him coming back to an extent. But then it's this idea of going, oh, maybe I should have read these Black Library books to realize what an absolute bastard he actually is.
It's more. It depends, because it depends who's looking at him. Is
he looking in a mirror and he's like, "Yep, I'm a good guy"?
Well, he thinks he's right, which I don't know if that's just probably not a justification. But
I think confidence isn't justification. I don't think.
So it's if you read The Last Church, which is a great mini story
because they didn't meet expectations, because the church didn't wipe out its planet.
It's set in the last church on Terra, and he's just talking to the last priest, and I think the last line is something like, he says, "Well, all those other people who tried and conquered the world, conquered the galaxy." He says, the Emperor says something like, "Yeah, but I'm right." Like, all right, that's the difference, is it?
Christ. But yeah, sorry. Back to Angron.
Oh, Angron, yeah. So he orders them to install copies of Butcher's Nails into his own Legion. And they say, "We can't, it's Architect, we don't know how it works." And he says, "Well, do it." And has it got 100% death rate? Why? He says, "No, do it." So he constantly is.
We've all had managers like that. We've all had managers like that.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it. Do it. They finally work out a way to get it to not kill people as often. So not only does he murder his own sons, he then drives them insane in a permanent murder rage. He decimates his own Legion. When they turn up, when the World Eaters turn up on a planet, it's not like, "Oh, we'll subdue it and then we'll conquer it and we'll try to restore it to get it back up and working as an imperial world." It's just kill everyone. But this is, again, the Emperor's like, "Well, it works." So
that's it. He's like, "Well, he's meeting quotas, you know."
Yeah,
look at Angron. That's why he got Employee of the Month.
Yeah, we'll look the other way for that.
Like Magnus is like, "I kind of want to learn stuff," and he's just like, "No, you're gonna have to murder people, I'm afraid."
So yeah, he's got all this. He's sort of like a cartoon villain almost, but there's a bit, and I've got the quote here, which I really like about him, where Lehman Russ is sent to say, "Hang on, stop murdering your sons and making them lunatics and butchering planets. That's a bit much." And he challenges him, and he says, like, Russ says, "We offer people freedom, and now you're calling the Emperor a tyrant. Have you gone mad?" And Angron says,
"Murder quotas." Just saying, just putting that out there.
Angron says, "You are free, Lehman Russ of Fenris, because your freedom matches the Emperor's will. For each time I wage war against worlds that threaten the Imperium's advance, there comes another time where I'm told to conquer peaceful worlds that wish only to be left alone. I'm told to destroy whole civilizations and call it liberation. I'm told to demand millions of men and women from these new worlds, to make them take up arms in the Emperor's hordes. I'm told to call this a tithe or recruitment, because we are too scared of the truth. We refuse to call it slavery." So
I think fairly bloody eloquent for a guy with nails in his head.
But that's like early Angron is quite an interesting villain because he accepts what he is, but he said but he doesn't. He's not a fan of the Emperor, to put it mildly. Yeah. Later on, when he becomes a cartoon villain, demon prince, he becomes less interesting. But I just like that other element to him, that he's not in the start. He's not a brute. He's got his own internal, not honor, but morality, and he doesn't see. He pierces right through this whole thing of, we're bringing compliance and liberation. No, we're slavers, just like, there's no difference. Why am I getting the blame because I turn up and do it well? I'm just doing what the Emperor says.
Yeah, and I think that's the hallmark of a good villain. Like it's it's why you can't have a beast be a villain, because it doesn't know what it's doing. The same way as like the Chaos Gods. Like demon princes are far more exciting as like adversaries and as characters than, say, Khorne itself. Like, because Khorne is like, hey, I just destroy, and guess he does have a personality and stuff, but you can't imagine Khorne being like, I think I'll be nice today. Let's have a day off. Or Slanesh being like, I'm just a bit bored, a bit bored of new things. So let's not have a murder orgy today.
Yeah, got a bit of personal choice. That's like Angron knows what he is, and he can see straight through, this veneer of what the Imperium is supposed to be. But he doesn't use that as a springboard to change himself or affect any change. He just embraces it. This is what I am. I enjoy. The only pleasure I get in life is from killing things, and that's why he sort of leads onto the more cartoony side of him. Anyway, he's my number 2. Well, I think we've run out of time for this episode, and again, we'll have to split it into 2. So, will you come back next week to reveal the rest of your choices?
I'll certainly give it a go, but I'm very busy with lockdown and doing nothing. So yeah,
so you try to pencil me in for that. Right, well, see you next time.